I'm so pleased to be here, and I'm always a little in shock when I'm asked to speak at events like this. Talks at conferences are usually very technical, dealing with the inner workings of telephony, and I'm not technical. My experience is obviously in voicing telephone prompts, and so I will be speaking today. My talk is based on a blog series that I did for the Digium website about a year ago. It was called The 15 Commandments of IVR, and I deconstructed ways in which people can write and design telephone prompts that hopefully allow your call flow to work clearer and to frustrate customers less. That's always the goal. So, a brief story before I start. My husband is a really big fan of the BlackBerry. I'm not sure if BlackBerry is very popular down here, but he's a big fan. He even got his teenage daughter to move away from the iPhone to the BlackBerry, which was no small accomplishment. So he downloaded the workout program for BlackBerry. It's called Endomundo. And he's all excited. He's going to take it to the gym. It's going to keep him motivated to work out. It's going to be great. So he took it to the gym. And he came back home and he had an expression on his face that, I thought maybe I'd done something wrong. And I said, what's going on? And he said, "You'll never guess who does the voice to Endomundo." So, yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere. They were using the Kestrel text-to-speech utility. So he chose to look on that as I was nagging him at the gym. Telling him to do 5 more, you can do it. So there's no escaping me. So let's get on with the 15 commandments of IVR. So commandment number 1, if you remember nothing else from this presentation, if you take nothing else away, let it be this. Don't overestimate your listener's attention span. It is shorter than you think it is. I always try to urge people to keep it as brief as possible and to get away from the thinking that once you have your callers calling in, they're cornered, they're trapped, they're almost captive. Great, now we have them on the telephone line, we can inundate them with all this information about our company. I urge you just to think of the opening greeting in its simplest terms. You're obviously confirming that the caller has reached the correct company. You are giving them options to the best departments that will best serve them, and this will reduce customer frustration and better use your call center staff. That's it, plain and simple. All right, second commandment. This is a sneaky one. Thou shalt not create fake mailboxes. So as the introduction said, I voice for many huge telcos and huge multinational companies. I probably voice for just as many small 1 or 2 person organizations, and almost everybody wants to sound bigger than they really are. They will design a website that looks incredibly slick to create the image that there's way more staff than there really is. And this sometimes manifests itself into people creating fake mailbox options to create the illusion of being bigger. So in addition to violating rule number 1, there's also something just slightly dishonest about that. Here we see an example of a pretty good opening greeting, but then we have the menu, which in my opinion is far too expanded. I urge people always to keep their selections to 4 or 5 maximum. You can always ask the customer to drill deeper into sub-menus. I would ask that you maybe keep those to 2 or 3 menu options only. This is far too much to ask people to listen to, let alone remember the choices. Commandment number 3, keep things simple. It sort of seems like I'm driving this point home. But if you were to boil your phone menu down to its simplest choices, get the callers to their departments as quickly as possible, and for bonus points, Don't ask for information that isn't needed or ask for it numerous times. My own bank, I live in Canada, I bank with Royal Bank. They ask for my client number 3 different times throughout a standard telephone call, and it's not actually through security checks. They ask for you to input it once, they will ask you to manually input it again, and then if you get through to a live agent, they too will ask for the PIN number again. It frustrates me incredibly, and it must frustrate other callers as well. Commandment number 4, always give callers an opt-in. So the common thinking previously was that if you assign the callers or you give the callers an opt-in, such as press 0 for the operator, they will abuse that option. I actually don't think they will. I think that may have been true at one time. People are so completely turnkey now that if you offer options that are pertinent to what they need and then offer an opt-in, as we see in this prompt, good opening greeting, the selections are boiled down to 4 choices, which always makes me very happy, and then the final option is to go through to a live operator. Obviously, if you offer this selection, you will need to measure it and make it traceable. If too many people are opting out to go straight to the operator option, I think this will probably tell you that your phone tree needs to be revised and you need to write better options that are more pertinent to your callers. Pretty obvious so far. Commandment number 5, front load important information. It is critical that you include the most important, the most time sensitive, and the most safety related items first, and obviously to the most popular choices that you anticipate people will need, front load the opening greeting. So I usually talk about an example of an actual client that I voiced for. It was a cardiology clinic in Florida, and they listed far too many phone tree choices, in my opinion, and the very last option, well, I'll just go ahead and show it to you. The very last option is, if this is a medical emergency, hang up and dial 911. So imagine someone having crushing chest pains, and you're forcing them to listen to all of these options, and the very last thing they hear, and it may be the last thing they hear, is hang up and dial 911. So personally, I would front stack that important information at the very beginning. Okay. Commandment number 6, understand what constitutes a prompt. So basically, a prompt is from edit point to edit point. It's important that your voice talent knows exactly where to divide the prompts into various sections. So with the prompt that you see on the screen, thank you for calling blah, 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 that's actually very evident that that's a good opening greeting, and there's no confusion about where to edit that prompt. In the bad example, as I've indicated, where you see the bullet number points, they actually intend that for that to be one prompt in and of itself. And it took me a few years to figure this out. It continues. So what they intend in the good section here is for those numbered bullet points to be as a unit in and of themselves, and then the other prompts are the sub-menus. So good continues there. So you sort of get the idea. For bonus points, try not to name your telephone prompts what the prompt is. That very first line, that's not an exaggeration. Many people take the existing prompt and they put an underscore underneath each word or between each word, and that's what they're labeling the prompt. It's too much typing for the voice talent to do. The second example on the second line, if you boil down that prompt into, a beautiful boiled down version of no outages, perfect. Even for further bonus points, if you're just to number your prompts, which a lot of people do, again, that makes it far more simpler for your voice talent. This is a fun one. Understand the proper pronunciation in concatenation. In other words, how you write a prompt will affect how it gets delivered and will ultimately affect how smoothly your call flow functions. The example on the screen where I've written your PIN number with a capital letter and ellipses that follow, that obviously indicates to your voice talent that it is the start of a sentence, and that the ellipses indicate that there will be a prompt attached on to the end of it. If you have ellipses starting that prompt and it ends with a period, that tells us that there will be stuff that your PIN number will be attached onto, and that we need to end it in a very finite way. The third example where we have ellipses, the prompt, and more ellipses, tells us that, of course, it's going to be a free-floating prompt, and it's going to have stuff wedged before it and after it. So we need to read it in a very free-floating manner. I hope that's clear. So why it's important is that with older IVR systems, the belief was that if you got the voice talent to read everything in a very monotonous, flat tone, it would increase the call flow. And that did work to a certain extent, except that, as we know, it led to a very robotic, very almost automaton sound. So when clients hire me to do voice prompts, and especially sequence-based prompts, and by that I mean numbers, letters, days of the week, that kind of thing, they will almost always have me read it in an up-ending concatenation, a down-ending, and a neutral. And I literally do that in the booth when I'm recording, up, down, and neutral. So it's the difference between 5, 5, 5. The two sort of sound a little bit similar, the two last ones, but you get the idea. And it seems like it's an extra expense and extra time to get the voice talent to read things in numerous different ways. But if you do, and you have your system set up in such a way that it knows where to send in the up-ending, the down-ending, and the neutral, it will create a much more realistic human sound. This is a pet peeve of mine and many, many other voice talents. Thou shalt not give directions to your office or facility. So this is a classic example of something that people hear in their telephone systems or hear in other telephone systems, and they think, oh, well, we must provide comprehensive directions to our office. And by comprehensive, I mean, having your voice talent read from every conceivable direction coming into town, how to get to your office. I think it's a bit time wasting, and it's slightly obsolete with the prevalence of GPS systems in most handheld devices and installed in most cars. So I would, prefer that people listed something along the lines of, our address is such and such, and program it into any GPS-enabled device. To me, that's much simpler. People can't follow this type of real-time description anyhow when they're driving. So it's kind of something that most people who voice telephone systems would like to see phased out eventually. Commandment number 9, thou shalt give pronunciation guides for proper names and places. So it's a good idea, especially if you're writing a phone tree that has staff names or place names, that you include a pronunciation guide. You have a very good idea of how your own name probably gets mispronounced, or how place names, like the address of your office, gets mispronounced. So these were words that came up recently for me that could have been a judgment call. Innis or Inns, Hebron, Hebron, Semorin or Samorin. It's important to write out exactly how you want it pronounced. The city where I'm from in Alberta is called Calgary. It's spelled at the end Gary, but nobody says Calgary. We say Calgary. So, but you wouldn't know that unless you're based there. And if people say Calgary, we always say, oh, where are you from? So, commandment number 10. Name your company something that needs no special instruction. So I realize full well that by the time you submit a script to your voice talent to voice, it's probably too late. You've probably already named your company. Many long hours have gone into debating about, what should we call it and how should we spell it. But I submit to you, if you're naming companies in the future, I think it's really, really important to take into consideration how the name will be heard, and not just how it projects on a page. I have the example under the tips section here of a company called, a fictitious company that I made up called Ignition, right? But it's spelled in a completely imaginative way. You know, you can imagine someone going, oh wow, this is really neat. It sounds like ignition, like everybody knows, but it's spelled in such a cool way. Well, it is cool, except you have to imagine what someone's going to do when they take that name and they key it into a browser. They're going to type ignition the way they probably think it's spelled, and it'll be incorrect. So I'm kind of in shock about how many people name their company something that almost makes them impossible to find, either on the internet or just regularly. So I always tell people to never name your company that needs special instruction. If you're asking your voice talent to redo your prompts because they've mispronounced your company's name, that's a big embarrassment for the voice talent. But think about it, if we're having a hard time getting a grip on how it's pronounced, how do your customers, how do lay people figure out the pronunciation? I did a phone system recently for a company. I hope they're not going to watch this video afterwards. They're based in Ireland, and they were called Debtors Exchange. But I found out very quickly that if I said it too fast, it sounded like I was saying debt or sex change. Debt or sex change. It was crazy. Even typing it into a browser, I kind of went, oh my gosh, that looks like sex change. So things to take into consideration. Commandment number 11. This one always confuses people. Don't go overboard with niceties. So in telephone systems, but particularly in on-hold systems, how many times have we been on hold and you've heard this endless mantra of, we know your time is important. Thank you for holding. If you know my time is important, why am I holding? So I think it's all right to mention a couple of times that you appreciate their patience while on hold. If people hear it too much, it sounds ingenuous and it sounds a little bit deceptive. So I always tell people, get people to a live agent faster and stop thanking them for their patience, because I think their patience will rapidly run out. Okay. Commandment number 12, read the copy out loud. There is a huge difference between seeing the telephone prompts that you've written on the page or on the screen and actually hearing them. So many people are reluctant to read their copy out loud. They don't want to be branded as the crazy person reading out loud at their desk, and that's perfectly valid. I always tell people to find an empty conference room and read your prompts out loud. You will be amazed at awkwardness of phrasing that will come out hearing the prompts on their feet. You could even also get someone to read them to you, and then you would be probably instantly struck by, oh, wait, that sounds incredibly odd. Most of my clients will probably give me the freedom to change things on the fly if I find that there's things that are awkwardly phrased, but it's a good idea to hear your prompts out loud. Commandment number 13, be clear on your company's vision and be prepared to explain that to me. So again, this sort of gets back to companies who probably spend a lot of time designing a website and really wanting to project the right image through their website about what their company is about and what they're all about. It's really important to be clear on that image and to be able to convey that to your voice talent as well. Is your industry that you're in sort of conservative? Do you have an older, more conservative clientele? That's important for the voice talent to know. Are you sort of a young startup, again, with clientele to match that vibe? You need to be able to explain that to your voice talent. It could drive your choice of voice talent, or it'll probably just give you a good idea of how to direct your voice talent in what to do. I have a great many different styles that I'm capable of, and usually most voice talent can take it in a number of different directions. I recently did the IVR for a huge American defense company. I won't say who they are, but I made the mistake of thinking, well, they're extremely serious. war is serious, so I need to do them in an extremely serious way. And they said, no, we want you to sound friendly and accessible. We're a defense company for the people. So that was a little surprising because I kind of misjudged that. But if you're able to explain that to your voice talent, it makes it much easier. Commandment number 14. Don't front load too much on the opening greeting. Again, it ties back to the things that I've been harping on so far about keeping it simple, reducing things to its most basic choices, and acknowledging that the listener's attention span is most definitely shorter than you think it is. So here's an example of an opening greeting, and I've changed the identity to protect the client. But this is verbatim what they wrote in their opening greeting. You know, they're talking about their widgets and how great their widgets are, and they've been making widgets forever, and if you buy the other guy's widgets, they'll probably kill you if you use them. So this is all before the customer even has a chance to pick an option that they want. I personally think it's way too much to ask the caller to listen to. I recently interviewed a woman named Emily Yellen. She is a customer service expert. She actually wrote the book called Your Call Is Not That Important to Us. It's a great read. So I asked her about whether or not you should set up even a dedicated line for people to learn more about the company. So, for example, if you'd like to hear more about XYZ, press 6. She said, no. People have already been to your website likely before they've given your company a call. Don't flood them with information there. So I said, fair enough. What about during an on-hold system? Because that seems to be, you know, a logical time to use that time if they have to be on hold to give them, you know, information about the company. She's really resistant of even it being used in that context. Personally, I'm okay with it. So if you feel like you need to educate your clients about the company, don't do it in the opening greeting. Set up a dedicated information line or do it through an on-hold system. Okay, and the final one. Write in a conversational tone. If you talk to any voice talent, they will tell you that probably the number one criticism we get from clients is that things sound too robotic, things sound too automated, and can you relax and sound more like a real person? Well, it's surprising how difficult that is, especially if the copy is not written in that style. I recently had to do an on-hold system for a company that manufactures marine-grade sealants. You can't imagine anything more dry and technical. And they kept saying, no, we want you to loosen up. Just sound like you're talking to your best friend about marine-grade sealants. Sure, whenever we get together, that's all we can talk about is marine-grade sealants. So make sure that your material is also written in a conversational tone as well. The trend definitely in IVR is to move more towards a personal, warm, conversational style. So just make sure that the copy is also written in that style. So that actually brings us to the end of it. You can find out more, and you can actually obtain a copy of this ebook, which of the blog series that was written by Digium on the Asterisk Exchange. My own web domain is theivrvoice.com, so feel free to contact me if you have any customized prompts that you need recorded. So I guess that's it, and we'll open it up to any questions that people may have. Any questions? Oh, I have to get all set up with this. Oops.
Yes, hi. How about the music when you're holding a phone call?
Where are you?
I'm here. Hi.
Oh. Hi. Sorry.
How about music when you're holding a phone call?
Yeah.
What music do you recommend? Because people have different tastes. That sometimes
they do. Yeah.
may get upset if they hear some music is not so nice.
Right.
What do you recommend?
It's a great question. So I think people have to be aware, first of all, of the legality of using music that is not cleared to use for on-hold systems. So you have to use royalty-free music, which is available online, and there's more and more websites where it's available. I also have a fairly respectable library of on-hold music, so when people hire me to do on-hold systems, I have music of various styles. What always astounds me, I had a client ask me, can we just play a Michael Jackson song behind? It's like, no, we can't afford that. None of us in this room are making that much money to afford that. So, yeah, it has to be royalty-free. With regards to the style, again, get back to the image that your company is trying to project. Usually kind of a soft jazz works for most people, but it really depends on the image that you're trying to convey. Yeah, I hope that helps. I'm not sure how to get this on. Any other questions? No? I guess not. Okay. Well, thank you so much for attending. Thanks.